Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Just Love Collective podcast called JustCoz. My name is Dilys, and I am coming to you from the West Coast of North America. And I come from an Afro-Caribbean background. Happy to be here as one of the co-hosts for this brand new podcast called JustCoz. And I want to invite my co-host to come on, Mike, and introduce himself.
Fair enough. I can do that. I'm Nathan, and I am a white Australian based on, just outside Melbourne, Australia. Excited to be here and to do what is episode 0, so it doesn't really count to the podcast, but it's good podcast listening. And of course, the reason we needed to do a new podcast was because there just aren't enough podcasts in the world, and we really needed to fill that gap. And so for all of you who've been sitting around in silence for years, perhaps, what could I listen to next? Having listened to all the podcasts, this is the answer to your prayers. Dilys, it's great to be with you as a co-host, and that's an exciting journey that we're launching with this kind of intro-y, shorter edition of the podcast, but we'll get into the full podcast with the next episode, so that's exciting. Ezekiel, tell us about yourself, and thank you for being with us on this launch episode.
Yes, good to be here. My name is Ezekiel. I am a Singaporean American. In terms of ethnicity, I am what you might call Peranakan back where I'm from, so mixed Chinese Malay, and I am currently based in the US on the West Coast.
And Moe, as the last person to join the podcast recording this morning, we're really just editing you in after a really good conversation we've already had. So,
thank you.
so please introduce yourself to us.
Yes. Hello, podcast world, and thank you, team, for being so patient. So I am Moe Stiles. I am of Samoan, German, Solomon Island descent with a sprinkle of Asian. We haven't done the DNA to say which part of Asia where we are from my dad's side, and a very proud Moana tribe from my dad's, from my paternal side of town. So grew up in Samoa, but I am now based in Australia. I travel on a New Zealand passport, but Australia has been the country that I now call home, with being such a proud Samoan as well. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and the journey. Thanks.
Very cool. So, Dilys, starting out a new podcast, one of the things we spent quite a bit of time on is, what are we going to call this thing? So, Dilys, you've got to explain this name to us, JustCoz.
Yeah, so it's, a play on words. Chris Blake is part of the Just Love Collective, and we went back and forth a little bit on even how we were going to spell it. But we believe, Just Love Collective, we want to unite hearts and inspire action. And we wanted to bring a conversation in the podcast world that talks about getting involved in just causes, right? There are lots of causes we can get involved in. And we want to talk about it just cause, because somebody should talk about it. Somebody should be engaging in a conversation around how Christians ought to engage in advocacy work and participate in just causes. So that's why we named it that. That's what we're working with. And we're hoping that as we get the season started and as listeners join us, that they too will identify just causes they want to get involved with, just cause.
Very cool. You referenced Chris Blake, and of course, and there's no parallel here, but in the Bible, the devil is called the father of lies, and there's no parallel, but with Chris Blake, we have the father of puns and plays on words. An homage to Chris Blake that we had to put something like that in the name of our podcast.
Absolutely. You started us off by saying, we're having a podcast to add to another podcast. But why are we doing this work? Why are we coming together to engage in conversation?
Yeah, well, we think there's some important things to talk about and some good things to say. We know there are people that are interested in what we're doing. This is part of the larger suite of good things and, various media and publishing and events and all of these things that Just Love Collective has been developing over now, a couple of years. And this is another form where we can have some longer form conversations to explore some of these ideas. One of the things that we're really wanting to do is to move beyond, so much of what passes for justice conversations in these days, around the world these days, is pretty much this idea of reaction. Something happens, and so we react, often in social media, but in other media and other ways as well. We're really trying to go a bit deeper than that we're really trying to look at the roots of what we're doing, that what we're doing is intimately connected to our faith. It's not just reacting to popular causes or popular ideas or even current events or the latest headline or the latest outrage or the latest, disaster of one kind or another. That we're really trying to look more deeply than that and recognize that this idea of justice that the Bible calls us to is a pattern of living. It's not just one reaction. It's not just one-off. It's that our lives are shaped by this call from God to what practical faithfulness looks like in the world around us. And that's what we're really trying to explore with this. So we're not so much picking up a particular issue, particular idea. I'm sure there'll be stories and examples that we'll reference throughout the conversations, but to actually go deeper and look at how our lives are shaped by the faith that we claim, the God we serve, the Jesus we follow, that will change us into the kind of people that are working, whose lives are a just cause in the world. And both a cause as in something to work towards, but a cause as in we are then the cause of of other things that happen, of making change, of making a difference in people's lives. Ezekiel, you're from a different generation to the other three of us, and you're our token young person.
Yes, I am.
And I mean that in the nicest possible way. We're all victims of our times and circumstance. What catches your attention as a younger person with this justice conversation?
I think I'm someone who I am the introvert, one of the introverts on this podcast and this call right now. I'm someone who really loves to observe, love to see and look at the things around me and to really think deeply about things, I think as the token young person, with this with the life that we live nowadays, so much with technology and new media and social media and all of these things impacting us, the way that things are very easily kind of tidbited down, very bite-sized and very quick, judgments, calls and things like that. I think for me, there is that value that I love on a more contemplative approach, on these things, to kind of really look at the deeper forces behind things that impact, the people around us, in the world. And I think that is something for me as a young person to contribute to and to be a part of spaces like this and to create this for others. I think that's something that it means a lot to me and something that I find that is worth making time for myself. Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking as you were talking, Ezekiel, and again, reflecting on what Nathan said right at the intro, it's another podcast, right? When people are sharing tidbits or just little bite-sized reels or videos or podcasts, for instance, you really don't get to have a deeper, a more insightful conversation about all the things that are happening behind the scenes. And I think one of the beauties of this kind of platform is to be able to have these conversations. And I'm so excited, Dilys, and friends, I'm really excited about the opportunity for us to dive a little deeper, beyond the bite size, and I must admit, it's one of those things when we were thinking about the podcast, part of me, and it's similar to engaging in a public forum like Instagram or Facebook, because there's people just going at each other all the time. But I wonder if that has taken away the art of good conversations. And I wonder, and I'm curious about us going on this journey, being able to reclaim the art of good conversation, but also the kind of conversation that transforms and challenges people. And, like, I'm excited for that. And hopefully we actually get to make an impact while we're at it.
Yeah, I think, Moe, I was talking to a colleague earlier today, and we were talking about the difference between a monologue, which is what happens in the social spaces, right? You have one voice that's speaking at others, whether it's a short clip or a long post, versus a dialogue, and getting in this dialogical process of saying, well, what do you mean when you say that? Or I'm not sure I understand, or I don't know that I agree with you, and I want to still keep talking to the person that's across from me. And as a result of our engagement together, we can develop a practice, right? Like develop a community that engages around particular topics, as opposed to talk, and then silence, talk. Because we've lost the art of engaging in conversation, right? We have, because of the bite-sized pieces and the shortened attention span. So I'm super excited, Nathan, about the kinds of things the kinds of people who will come on this journey with us, and the topics that we're going to be covering while we're here.
And it certainly is one of the opportunities we have, is that by building a platform like this, we can just sit down and listen to some people that really do some good things, that are engaged in important work, that we can learn from their experience and their wisdom and their, even just their stubbornness at times, that, they continue to work on some of these topics, despite the fact that they seem to be losing, but they understand that what they're doing is right and good, and that, is in harmony with God's call, and that we can be inspired by their faith and their faithfulness, even if not by their success or their, what they might have achieved. I think that's an important thing for us to celebrate. One of the things, even our Just Love Collective name, we pull together these two key ideas of, to do justice, love mercy. And of course, the third element to that verse is walk humbly with your God. And I think that to some degree, that third part of it is the summary of the first two, that doing justice and loving mercy is the act of walking humbly with your God. And I wrote an article a few years ago, which just from a bright idea that I'd kind of ripped off from back in my days at law school, actually, when you read a list and you have a descriptor on the end of a list, in that case, with your God, that there is an argument at times that you can read it, that could also apply to the do justice with your God, love mercy with your God, walk humbly with your God. And it's actually probably a little bit of a stretch of the language of the text, but I think it's very much the idea that we're talking about, that this is what God requires of us. This is how we actually live our lives and are present in the world in harmony with God, is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly.
But I was just thinking again, Nathan, but to do that, to do it as a collective, because I think to do really good work, we've got to do it together. And I wonder if we were, again, this morning I said to the kids, when I was doing chapel, I said, you're growing up in the world where it's just so chaotic, and, and the world seems mean and scary. But what if we did good work together? Would the world be a little less scary? And I wonder if that's one of the things that we can contribute to this space of conversation and dialogue, that it is a collective work, a collective good work. I don't know. I'm thinking on my feet now. It's it's good work that we can get to do together with God, with each other, but do it with justice and love. And I'm just like, yes, we need more of this. Sorry.
No, preach, sister, preach.
Let's do it.
Indeed.
Yeah. So our theme for this first season is justice plus love is faith in action. And I'm wondering, what does that mean for each of you? Justice plus love. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, I think both those terms, justice and love, and of course, that is a key, those two things we've banged together into just love. But justice and love are both words that have been used so much for so many reasons in our world that they can be kind of become a little meaningless, or that they mean anything to whoever is using them at the time, and thus they do come to mean nothing on their own. And that's where I think that we do need to get back to, I guess, our faith roots of this work. That, how does the Bible define love? How does the Bible define justice? And this will be an ongoing challenge for us across this podcast, is defining those terms. If that's one of the best things we can do, however many episodes down the track, if we have a clearer understanding of what we mean when we use the word justice and what we mean when we use the word love, then I think we will have done something good. So just as a bit of a discussion to tease us into that, Ezekiel or Moe, what working definition could you give us for those two words, or one at a time if you wish?
Yeah. So a really good question. One of the things I think about is that the word justice in itself is to make things right, is to put things right, because things are wrong. There's so much wrong. There's so much bad. And there is this idea that the work of justice is restorative. It is to redeem. It is to bring things together, bring it back. And we cannot do that without this love bit. I mean, they're interchangeable. To love is to do justice. And you do justice because there is this overwhelming sense of love that you have for people and the world. And I know it sounds very Pollyanna-ish because that's my other name. But I wonder if we need a bit more of that in the world. That we don't just scream at each other just because we want to come across to be right and this is the truth that you need to believe in, but because you actually get to love people genuinely and have a heart for people no matter where they are in the world, whether they believe like me, sing like me, all the things. That to do justice is to love. And if we cannot do one or the other, it's that whole actionable posture of you can't say you love but don't engage. It's like Corinthians when it talks about how we're just like clanging cymbals. You can't say we love God and love people but don't engage in making things right for those who are, really being impacted by systems of oppression. So, hello, empire.
It kind of, what you were saying, Moy, reminds me a bit of the Cornel West quote of justice is what love looks like in public. That, love in its different context, love is different things in our different relationships. But when love steps out in the public square, in our communities, in our societies, it looks like justice. Because that is the practice of love. Love is not just this kind of gushy emotions or, even some kind of nice feeling that we try and conjure, but it's actually actively seeking the best for that other person. And in the context of our life together in our, communities, that is seeking the best for someone else in our community, and particularly those people who are most marginalised or disadvantaged in that community. What can you add to that for us, Ezekiel?
Yeah, I really love the responses you have given. Those who know me know that I am a creative, and if you will allow me to go a little rogue, and just bring something else, into the mix, So I love story. I'm passionate about story, and I think there's a quote by Dr. King that really struck me, and kind of the way that it related towards story, but the way he framed it was, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So if just kind of like parsing it, through my lens, through story, if there was a story for the universe that we have a part to play in, something that we have a role to do, perhaps this is it, like that something embedded within the spirit of faith, within, a meaningful way to live, within the will of that who we call God is, this pursuit of rightness, this becoming, there is something maybe even, natural, dare I say, or should be, to it, and it's, like maybe it's something that is, inevitable to it, but that doesn't mean that there is something, that we have a part to play in bringing this into being, just because this is something that will come does not mean that it does not matter how it comes into being. So I feel like I've grown to really look beyond the, like the future, like, like as much as we look forward to, and dream of something better, and perhaps, right, to what degree we parse concepts like salvation and everything within a Christian and Adventist context, we look to what it means to perhaps, right, like, those literal and a way of life and the things that we do to kind of do our part, in kind of being the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven now and today as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that. The quote that comes to mind for me when I think about justice plus love, proximity to suffering creates empathy. And I think we serve a God who was proximate to the challenge of humans' inability to trust God, and then comes close to us and then decides to live to show us how to be human, and then to pay the ultimate sacrifice of dying on a cross so that anyone who believes would have access, right? Not anyone who's perfect, not anyone who's got it sorted out, not anyone who's never messed up, but anyone who believes. And so if that's what we've based our Christianity on, is this God who models a willingness to come into proximity to our human suffering, then that's what the work of, to me, that's what justice plus love means, right? It's recognizing something's not right here, and someone needs to put skin in the game. Someone needs to be willing to, if they have to, put their life on the line so that folks will experience love and really know that as image bearers of God, that there's a God who cares, and we become extensions of that. So it's not just words, Nathan. We have to do something, right? And it's important to be in relationship with someone, to be able to say, oh my goodness, to grieve with that person, or to express frustration or annoyance or even anger, right? And beyond being angry, beyond being frustrated, beyond this grief, there's this invitation to say, what can I do to relieve this person's pain? So that's what it means to me.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start, with a lot more detail to be filled in, as far as what that means, what it looks like, how we can do that. And it's kind of an interesting thing that, when we can have this passion for justice, but to do it in a way that is shaped by love, because it can so easily become not justice. Even while we head off towards justice, but we can very easily turn it into something else. Even if it is just imposing our own, vision of reality on somebody else. That's not justice or freedom. That's just a different kind of oppression or a different kind of bullying or however, whatever. So one of the disadvantages, and I use that perhaps in quote marks, one of the disadvantages of the call that we have to faithful justice doing is that we always have to do it justly, that we always have to do it with love, and that we can't simply impose it on others, that we can't, if as soon as we cross a line, that's not justice anymore. And so that's a pretty significant, I think, proviso to what we talk about, because justice is a politically loaded term in much of our society today. And so often when people push back on me for talking about justice in that kind of way, the first thing I'll come back and say is, that's not what I'm talking about. And that's where, I was involved in a conversation with someone who, direct messaged me about my talking about justice and my stance on various, what they saw as political issues. And they, have you read this philosopher or this theorist or this whatever? And I said, well, actually, most of the stuff I seek to practice, it comes from theologians. And that what I'm doing is trying to be something that is shaped by faith, which only then and after that has political shape, has political implications, has political direction to it. And so this isn't a political project. It's a faith project with political implications.
Yeah. Nathan Brown, ladies.
And so, as one of our friends, Moe, Reverend Tim Costello, often says, this isn't about going left or right, it's about going deeper. And then that depth will actually, whichever direction that pushes it, and it will push us in different directions, perhaps on different issues, or even different directions on some of the same issues in different contexts, in different places and times. That shapes what we're doing, so it actually isn't, it might look on the surface like we're, signed up to a particular movement or project or campaign or side or whatever. That's where we need to interrogate ourselves in our own, the integrity of our own faith, that we aren't just on a side because that's our side, but that we're actually seeking to follow God. And at times that will lead us into places that look like a side. Because historically, biblically, God takes sides.
It's really hard to hear that, but it's true. God took a side. He ended up on the cross, apparently.
Because he took a side.
He took a side.
Yeah. I think, Nathan, I love what you've been saying and this invitation to center our faith as the rubric that we use to inform how we act. I have spent a lot of time over the last few years reflecting on the Sermon on the Mount. And I'm talking about not just what we call the Beatitudes, but Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And one of my favorites of what we call the Beatitudes, is blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And it's mishpat and tzedakah. I mean, we're gonna break it down later, so I don't even want to get into that right now. But it's an invitation to say that justice plus love invites us to do something. I want to say that for the people in the back, like it's doing something. It's not just paying lip service, because we serve a God who did something, a God who does something. I feel like I'm preaching now, so let me stop.
So our plan for this episode 0 of JustCoz was that this would be a light, brief introduction to what we're going to, and I think we have failed. I think we've failed at least on the, and we're rapidly getting to the point where we're failing on the short as well. But perhaps we have succeeded in an introduction to some important and valuable and deeper conversations. So maybe as a wrap up, if we can just ask each of us to sort of about what are you hoping for out of this podcast series? why are you choosing to be a part of it? Why does it matter to you? And then what do you hope to be able to, that this podcast series will share? I think that's probably what we need to do in wrapping this one up before it becomes episode 025, and we'll have to put it out as a series in itself.
Yeah. My hope is that it is a hope giver for those who are feeling weary, and who are in the struggle for justice. So we hope that this becomes a resource of hope, you know. I also hope that this journey and these conversations and dialogue give our tools, you know, become a tool for those who are engaging in the work of justice, and I hope it helps to sustain not just us, but I think the fact that we get to do it together is such a gift. So we hope it's a gift to the world. Yeah.
I think for me as a young person and just kind of like in conversation with many of my friends, you know, both like within and beyond the church, you know, like I feel like one big thing that's rested on me is kind of like how relevant really is like faith, you know, to today, you know, like and modern society and what in the lives that we live now. You know, and I am someone who on my faith journey, you know, like, you know, within and beyond, you know, like within faith, I'm still motivated to believe that there is value to this, you know, like, and I think a lot of that lies in how do we respond? How do we act? You know, how do we live, you know, like in response to what things, you know, in response to the things that are happening around us. You know, so I think really as a young person, you know, like, especially for those, you know, who are interested in what that looks like, you know, like, how is my faith relevant, you know, like, and like, how can I live, you know, like faithfully and also be able to make a meaningful impact, you know, like in society and the people around me in both big and small ways, you know, like, I think that is something that I would love for us to continue to bring about and for people to be able to find from this.
Dilys, your thoughts to wrap us up?
I would like this experience, JustCoz podcast, to become a community of praxis, a community where we're not doing this by ourselves, that we are not just dialoguing with one another, but we're sharing with one another. Here's what's working where I am. Here is what I've tried, so that unlike Elijah, who felt like, you know, he was the only one and God had to say, no, my guy, you're not the only one. I'm hoping that as a result of our engagement as a collective, that we become a community of practice and that we will resource folks and encourage folks. And as you said, Moe, bring hope. And for us, as a part of Just Love Collective, what we want to do is unite hearts and inspire action. And so we're hoping that all of you will join us on this journey as we begin this first season of the JustCoz podcast. And I'm thankful for Ezekiel and Moe and you, Nathan, for being here tonight. And we want to give a shout out to our tech person tonight, Sam Gongaloo, who's in the background. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Thank you for joining us for episode 0 of the JustCoz podcast.
Make sure you subscribe to this feed to get the episodes as they're released in the coming weeks. We have so many good things to share with you.
And be sure to let others know about this exciting new podcast series.
To discover more about Just Love Collective, visit our website, justlovecollective.org, and connect with all the other good things we're doing,
including the Just Love Summit, April 10 to 11 in Riverside, California, Pulse, our monthly digital magazine, Just Love Notes, and the Just Love Book Circle.
We'll be back soon with episode 1.
Thank you for being part of our Just Love community.